Hello and welcome to the 10th Movie Night Extravaganza takeover of This is Revolution podcast. My name is Forrest Miller of Movie Night Extravaganza, the host. On July 6th, 2021, Jay Underworld and I launched the first episode of Movie Night Extravaganza. It was just supposed to be a fun side project that would allow us to watch some movies and talk about them. A year later, we're stronger than ever. We've done 10 This is Revolution crossover episodes and 99 episodes of the main show. Tonight, we're going to be celebrating Movie Night Extravaganza's first birthday. I wish Conan had the applause sound effect right now from me, but the film we're going to discuss here is Stanley Kubrick's 1971 A Clockwork Orange, starring Malcolm McDowell as Alex DeLarge, a sadistic gang member in a crime-ridden fascist dystopia in England, who gets imprisoned for a murder and volunteers for a conduct inversion experiment called the Ludovico technique to get out of it. Now, before I bring in my panelists for this evening, I would like to remind you all to like and subscribe both to This is Revolution podcast and my channel, Movie Night Extravaganza, now 1 year old. You can also support Movie Night Extravaganza on Patreon, where you get access to all kinds of amazing discussions and interviews. Links in the description. So without further ado, let's bring in the crew. Starting with Kristina Oakes. I'm Kristina on Twitch. And, our Ludovico technique experiment, nurse today,
I live for the applause.
Yeah, and there's plenty of it tonight. We are also bringing in Conan Neutron, host of Protonic Reversal, and of course, frontman for Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends.
Video, me droogs.
Guys, the Cadova Milk Bar, we're hitting it up after this. You know what I mean? We're going hard on the is it Veldrin? I think is the. I'm also bringing in Jay Underworld, cartoonist, illustrator, comic book aficionado, cover artist for multiple books, good at doing that, and of course the Ben Burgess associate. Ben Burgess is going to be on our after party, at least for 15 minutes.
Yeah, and I also want to thank Harvey J.K. for appearing in the introduction there, getting beat up like that. So thank you, Harvey.
The professor. Damn. Yes. And of course, Jason Miles is here in the in the backstage area. How's it going, buddy?
I just wanted to say some words real quick. We got to meet each other in real life. Conan Forrest is a lot taller than I thought he was going to be.
And I got COVID in the process.
You did. And there's a picture of me kissing you on the head, and I stayed COVID free. So I guess getting that booster shot gave me a superpower or something, because everybody that I was hugged up with for 2 days got the virus.
That's me and my sister. There's something in our DNA. There has to be. We're just immune to COVID at this point.
I'm
Sometimes.
okay with that.
Yeah, that's the DNA. That's a DNA skill I'd like to have, or DNA, mutation.
but I wanted to say, when Jean Bajlan presented me this idea of helping you out, I think my first reaction was like, "What? We don't have anybody watching our channel." And then I was like, "Sure, I don't care." And then we started doing the show. Surprisingly, for those that don't know, this show is also on the This is Revolution audio channel as well, where it does very, very well. There's a lot of shows you guys have had that people are big fans of. I don't get to come on the show that much, but one of my best friends in the whole wide planet, Conan Neutron, is part of the show, and just the fact that I'm able to do something with him in some capacity makes me a happy camper. And having Movie Night Extravaganza as part of the This is Revolution family is part of a bigger vision of things that I've had for some time. So 1 year, I think we started off like, let's see what happens after 3 months.
And 5 years later,
here we are 1 year later. So
yeah, thanks so much. And it was, I remember Gene coming to me and saying like, "Hey, you guys should do this on This is Revolution." And I was like, really? Like that's a channel that's way bigger than this one. We can actually grow it to that capacity. He's like, "Yeah, I do have a list of things that I need to that you should change if I'm going to allow you to.
We'll probably talk about it exactly with my list, by the way.
It's a
Yeah.
constant
No,
growing
yeah.
experience, right? You know,
It
if
is.
anyone can attest to that, it's Conan who's been doing this podcast stuff before it was cool.
Podcast Elder God.
But I want everyone on the screen. I want to thank you guys for helping actually grow This Is Revolution, adding a kind of a whole nother layer. I definitely love everything pop culture. As you know from the last video essay that was about film. I do have a movie night on This Is Revolution that we do for patrons that I think I'm going to do, where I watch a movie that I find so bad it's good. For me, it's like The Black People, The Room. I'm excited to do that.
I still remember when we did Judas and the Black Messiah, and we did that on
that was on
Ben's,
Burgess' channel, right?
Yeah, and we did that in Discord, and then Ben's like, "Oh, we don't need to record the conversation." I was like, "No, I think you need to record."
That wasn't great. Me and Ben did not agree. Me and Ben did not agree on Judas and the Black Messiah at all. But Andy has been a huge help in This Revolution family for designing our literally most famous piece of merchandise that I actually saw in real life at the show in New York, the Anglo Pessimism shirt.
Yeah, I saw it too, and I sent it to Andy, and I was like, "Spotted in the wild" as a joke, and he's like, "Wait, it wasn't at the Sublation launch?" And I was like, "No, I meant like at the, at the Sublation launch."
So this for me, this thing is really fun. I have no input whatsoever. This is all the Forrest, Andrew, Conan show, and I get to watch it from the sidelines. And like
Kristina
I said,
does a lot too.
Yeah, I just sit here and look pretty.
I'm sorry.
That used to be my job.
That used to be your job. But I want to get out of your guys' way. I just want to say congratulations on 1 year on doing this. This is Revolution. And I know you're trying to get the subscribers up to 1,000. How many are you short?
I think we're at somewhere near 5. No, we're at like 560. I think now, or 570. So yeah, we have quite a ways to go. But
well, let's share the hell out of the show. If everyone watching right now, and I can see the number of everyone watching right now, were to share this show, then we could definitely at least get to 900 by the end of the night.
We could. So everybody
share the show, people.
Yeah.
I'm going to be sharing the hell out of the show on the This Is Revolution social media. And thank you, Forrest, for approaching me. Thank you for helping us with This Is Revolution, with the graphic that you created that I always play before every clip.
And I should be helping a lot more soon. I was talking to Gene about I'm going to start working for Sublation, I think, in a couple weeks, and be helping out with clips and stuff. So
well, that's Doug, and Doug is not us. So remember that we are not.
Well, no, I know, but I don't know. Gene said that some of that was going to be helping out with this.
Yeah, no, it's all one big lefty. It's all one big lefty family, and if we're not helping each other, then what are we really doing?
Exactly, 100%.
Well, I think it's great. I think these monthly nights are wonderful. They have a different vibe, and I appreciate that. It's a different kind of experience, and honestly, as I just noticed, we burned through 10 minutes. Keeping it to an hour is kind of a challenge, especially when it's more than two or three people. But it's a challenge. I think we've come up with some good episodes. And Jason, I've known you a very long time. I really appreciate that you do it. And the whole This Is Revolution Expanded Universe is something to celebrate.
Well, on that note, I'm gonna leave and go get cheap Mexican food here in Mexico. Have fun talking about an insane film, you guys. And
come on the main show sometime soon.
I love y'all. Well, I was excited about the Stalker thing because I just watched the thing about Stalker, so I was kind of stoked you guys were covering that. I was assuming that was either an Andrew or Conan idea.
It's me. Very easy, you might expect come from me, but it is a group effort. It was really nice having like Ian Miller from Kowloon and Varn on though for that. That's like it's I like when you get good combinations of people that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be together.
And I have to say again, the combination of voices that we get to have on this because of this expanded universe that we've created in this left media sphere, added with Conan in the music sphere as well. It's a really, really cool group of people that get to talk about some interesting film that don't get enough discussion. So thank you guys for all that you do. Keep it entertaining. And as we say on This Is Revolution, I am out.
I didn't get to tell my middle name is Entertainment. Conan Entertainment Neutron.
So I'm gonna throw on the old trailer. I'm glad that we got to introduce it before putting on the trailer. There probably is a way to do it in the future, but I am very resistant to it. So so there you go.
We can talk about that after.
There was me, that is Alex, and my 3 droogs, that is Pete, Georgie, and Dim. And we sat in the Korova milk bar trying to make up our razoo docs what to do with the evening. The Korova milk bar sold Milk Plus, which is what we were drinking. This would sharpen you up and make you ready for a bit of the old ultra-violence.
Hi there, my little droogies.
The evening's the great time, isn't it, Alex Boy?
He's enterprising, aggressive, young, bold, vicious. He'll do.
Who on earth could that be?
Now it was lovely music that came to my aid, a bit of the old Ludwig van.
Pretty well, little brother. Pretty well. It'll be your own torture. I hope to God it'll torture you to madness. Stop it, please, I beg you! Food, all right. Great, sir, great. Try the wine.
It was gorgeousness and gorgeosity made flesh.
It's a pretty good trailer, I'd say.
Very well, very well.
How do you?
I love the line. I love the line. It was gorgeosity and gorgeousness made flesh. That's like always been one of my favorite lines from the movie. There's almost something Shakespearean, right, about the dialogue in this.
Absolutely, yes. Hard to
Which comes from the book, actually.
Yeah.
The book is actually written in that kind of fake language. So
And
It's
I found it. I found it very
It's
hard to listen to the audiobook of the book because like you have to keep track of because there's way more of that dialect, right? And we'll talk about this because I have a clip on how the screenplay was written, and it's kind of written on the fly, which is kind of an interesting way for Kubrick to do it, which is not usually how he did things. He liked to write his own screenplays, but in this case, I think he asked Anthony Burgess, not related to Ben Burgess, spelled differently, to write a script based on the book that he'd written, and didn't like the screenplay that he wrote about it, so he ended up doing his own version of like an on-the-fly screenplay, which hadn't been done before. But yeah, it's hard to like listen to it. It's hard to listen to it and keep the words like keep the lingo down.
I'm trying to think about it. I think this is one of the only films I can think of that actually comes with a glossary. Trainspotting's another one, but
Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Was that a book
Love
first?
I love that movie.
Well, for the Cockney slang.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I was talking about the book, but we already moved off to another topic. But like in the book, there's something that really kind of struck me is like, oh, there's a glossary. Like, and then like you start reading, you're like, oh, okay. And it's notable in the movie as well. But I think in the movie, because you hear the speech patterns, it's easier to kind of get the gist of what's going on. Just like they say, it's easier to learn a language by hearing it spoken aloud rather than like reading it from a book or something along those lines. But it is. On rewatch recently, I did notice the sort of like Shakespearean-esque stuff big time, like probably more so than normal. And it's notable because there's a lot of like pomposity that goes along with like this mundane vulgarity.
Yeah.
Yes, and
Well,
that's the key.
and I'm trying to find the line he says, but Dim says it when they're in the Cadova Milk Bar the second time, and he hits him, and he's like, and I'm not your brother, and wouldn't want to be, and like the way he says something, and another time that Alex says like when he's challenging Billy Boy and all those guys, he's like, you eunuch thou, like the phrasing of you eunuch jelly thou or something, and the phrasing of the way that those words are, like the phrasing is almost Shakespearean, right? Like it's like the old English style of like backward speak
Or Pig Latin. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
But it gives it a sense of being both very much grounded in reality, but then also having like that science fiction element where it's not immediately clear when this takes place, right? It's meant to be like sometime like in the not so distant future, which is interesting because like because he wrote this, Burgess wrote in early 60s, I think is when he wrote the book, if I remember correctly. Or
That sounds about right.
I think it's early 60s. We got our top
That
fact check.
takes place in Ron DeSantis' Florida Panhandle.
You know, the original cut was almost like 4 hours long.
Wow.
I mean, that's not surprising.
It's not.
It was another one of those very grueling like Kubrick shoots, right? Like where he like literally tortured the actors throughout the entire shooting process. And then this one, like by tortured, it means like physically tortured the actors, like allowed Malcolm McDowell to actually get like the shit beat out of him on multiple occasions and
have his eyes wide open, but like they had a real doctor ensure like doing a real doctor was the one doing the scene with him just to make sure his eyes wouldn't get all dried out.
He scratched his cornea actually. He moved around too much and actually the cornea scratched right here, and like so one of those shrieks is an actual real like
Man, before they had real regulations, huh?
Well, I mean, Kubrick, the way he shot was also he took it out of.
Whatever you wanted. Sorry, go ahead.
He made the actors come to him, right? So the regulations that might have taken place, like that might have happened in like Hollywood or something, didn't happen because he's like, hey, why don't you come to England and actually hang out with me like 10 miles from my house, and we're not gonna get the old film unions involved in this. I don't think he was battling with the film unions like to the extent that someone like Francis Ford Coppola was, but like
Comes here a classic episode of the conversation about that one.
Mm-hmm.
And all unused footage was destroyed.
But yeah, a perfect example of the Shakespearean language, right? Oh, bliss in heaven. It was gorgeousness and gorgeosity made flesh. It was like a bird of rare spun heaven metal, or like silvery wine flowing in a spaceship. Gravity all nonsense now. As I slushied, I knew such lovely pictures. And that's his description of listening to old Ludwig van, singing or whatever, playing the ninth. I almost said singing the ninth. Well, that one lady. Yeah.
If you're going to be more specific, yes.
I like Slushied as his version of as he listened, as he like heard the sounds.
Yeah.
Like, because video makes sense, right? Like it's to watch a video or like to see something, but like Slushied doesn't really.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them, if you really look at it, like, oh, okay, I see where he's coming from. The babushka for like that's kind of the root word for the old lady.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but yeah, no, it's wild. I also love the fact that
Droog is friend in Russian, and I knew that before I ever watched this because there's that rapper, Your Old Droog.
I just know old droogie bastard. But yeah, there is actually a lot of Russian in the slang. If I remember reading it,
it's Cockney slang, Russian slang, Polish slang, I think, and Romanian. Like, yeah, and they also use like old gypsy words too. Like it's a weird combination of all these different kind of Eastern European, which kind of gives the impression that the Cold War is kind of over and the fascists have kind of won, and they've incorporated. Because they never really it's almost like a 1984 situation. It seems like, right? Like you never see anything outside of the English society, so you can kind of assume that maybe like the Cold War is over and they've incorporated all of this into like
there's like a European Union that they're all a part of. They're trying to Brexit from
neoliberalism's. They've moved past liberalism to maybe some kind of neoliberalism.
Yeah.
and everybody's fascist now. I think this is one of the most accurate fascist like societies put on film, right? Like I think that there's a lot of different parts to it. Number one, obviously, like the easy cleanup of realizing that, oh well, we can't really keep making the jails full of common criminals because we need this jail space for political prisoners, and we're gonna have so many of them that like we need to figure out a quick fix. So like Ludovico technique becomes like a way to kind of just reprogram your brain rather than actually like doing anything to change the intrinsic or like material basis for why people are criminals. They're just like, well, why don't we just kind of erase the brain itself and get people back on the streets because we need this space for dissidents.
Well, it addresses the letter of the problem, not the intent of the problem, and that's one thing that's so casually horrifying, and why the social commentary on this still works, because that kind of thing still happens. Maybe not on that comical of a level, but the idea of addressing an issue, but doing so in such a way that satisfies the baseline criteria, but also helps your political goals, still happens to this day all the time. And it's frightening too that think about language, right? The actions don't matter as long as the language isn't vulgar. Like how many people were against Trump because he was a quote unquote vulgarian, right? Like as opposed to the intent of it being, no, this is the culmination of like 20 to 30 plus years of pseudo fascistic philosophy, but done so by someone that barely understands what the term even means, and just like walked into a suit that was made for him by like decades of framed language. It's the same kind of deal, right? Like, what is Alex at the end of it? They're putting him into politics. It's one of the most frightening endings of all the terrifying things about Clockwork Orange. It's one of the most terrifying endings that, like, at the end of it, it's like, oh no, he's got a future. This young man's got a future, and that's the worst thing ever, because he hasn't changed at all in any way, shape, or form. It's made explicitly clear. I think it's all the more powerful because of that.
And they've tried to it seems like they've tried to program his brain back to normal. And back to normal is kind of horrifying because he was kind of one of the most delinquent and menacing characters in this whole movie. So like to program his brain so that he's adverse to
right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, to be explicitly clear, like one of like the almost dictionary definition of the term. But yeah.
I forgot that this line is in it, but I love at the end when they're having him look at all the pictures or whatever, and he says, "No time for the old and out, love. I've just come to read the meter."
That's like my all-time favorite line right there from the movie.
There are more than a few incredibly darkly comic lines in this. Like the whole thing with the guys at the head of the prison, like almost everything he says is hilarious, and like sometimes it's like with emotion or something, but. Yeah, they get away with it.
It's almost like a Monty Python sketch. Like right. You could see John Cleese, dressed up as like a Nazi in the prison, like as a guard, doing some kind of weird Python-esque sketch with everybody's standing around us watching him, not knowing what to say because he's
and the character in those scenes are just a delivery system to see that like Alex has like turned these like homicidal and like dark tendencies of his towards like, oh no, it's okay if it's the Bible, right? Like he says the right words, and he like has zeal in the right places, stands up when everyone else sings the hymns, etc., and then now it's like, oh no, that's acceptable now. And so
I love that he sees himself in the Roman guard that's beating the fuck out of Jesus.
So I guess it's darkly funny if you engage in that. I mean, it's also like, let's address it 25 minutes in. Casual rape, right? Not cool at all. But it is meant to be absolutely horrifying, and it is.
One scene was supposed to go on for like a long 28 minute like take, like one shot take, and I'm like, hey.
It's like a snuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's better that they don't show it. I think that it works a lot better. That they kind of, after he says "Vidi well," it fades out, and then they're in the Cadova milk bar like later on in the movie. I think that would work way better than kind of a horrifying, rape scene. Although, I mean, what they keep in
this film hasn't been like hard to swallow to watch.
Yeah. Well, they said they had to redefine "Singing in the Rain" to be something terrible, which was, if I remember, I think that was an improv. Like that wasn't in the script. I think that was a Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah, so Kubrick asked him, "Do you know any songs?" And he's like, "I know one song, and it's Singing in the Rain."
Yeah, Gene Kelly, Malcolm McDowell said one time he ran into Gene Kelly at a party and he just walked away in disgust because he was just so bitter about how his song was used.
I can imagine. Yeah, that's checked out.
Yeah.
I mean,
Which Malcolm McDowell was cast in this movie because he did a movie in '68 called If, where he played another juvenile delinquent. Where I mean, he also looked like a Spider-Man classmate in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man film. Because I mean, he was pushing 30 in this movie. In '68 he was still in his mid-20s, where he could be a senior. I don't know. No, he could be a senior in Sam Raimi's verse.
Yeah, the only way that they could make him a senior is that they can put him into the same high school as Tobey Maguire.
Yes.
I mean, I love all praise those movies. It's like these folks are in high school, y'all. Come on now. Like,
It would be funny if old Malcolm McDowell walked out and was like, "Hey kids, that was a crazy math class that we all had together."
Hey there, fellow kids.
And what's interesting about Malcolm McDowell is that he's always every character he's ever played since Clockwork Orange is almost has a slight reference to the movie. I mean, in the film Easy A, starring Emma Stone, where he played the principal, they kept saying his principal was a fascist, was like from Clockwork Orange, and I'm like, huh.
I think that the sort of hoodlum to cop timeline is like kind of amazing in this as well. Like the fact that like his gang ends up being cops.
Yeah, this is right around the same time what's his name wrote the People's History of the United States of America, said that cops are recruited from the criminal class.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it shows that in a fascist society, right? Like the criminal element is always kind of recruited into the power structure itself. And I mean, you see that in societies like Brazil, you see that across Latin America, you see that in in Europe, whenever Europe's devolved into fascism. Like there's always a paramilitary arm that they kind of recruit from and I mean, you see it in Ukraine right now with the Azov battalion, but like there's always a far right element, like a far right fascist element taken out of the most devious and criminal element in that society, used for like parastate violence, and then they're eventually brought into the actual apparatus of the government. And in this you're brought I think that this is kind of an awesome way to show that without without being too heavy-handed about it, because I love the line that Georgie says, and he's like, "You're old pals." He's like, "We're the police." And he looks down at him, or no, he says, a good job for two men that are now of job age, the police. And then you see Alex's face, and he's absolutely horrified by the realization that like now his two former gang members that absolutely hate him are the cops that are about to waterboard him.
Well, and it puts you in a position of you're kind of.
We can't hear you, Conan. Okay.
I raised your volume, Conan, but yeah.
It puts you in a position where
there we go.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know what that. I don't know.
Maybe one of us can throw our voice while his mouth moves.
I'm gonna take Conan's audio and go, "I'm singing in the rain, singing in the rain."
Look, it's not me. I have a cup of water.
Someone made a comment. Jay Hutch Talks Too Much made a comment about like how inappropriate and pervy "Singing in the Rain" is, and I'm thinking to myself, well, he's kind of singing because he's falling in love with this really, really, really young ingenue. So, and he's like what, in his 40s, I think. Gene Kelly was like what, almost 50 when this film came out. I don't know, but like,
yeah.
And Debbie Reynolds was like 20, something like that.
This old Hollywood for you.
Yeah. Ooh. So one of the things I love about this film is obviously how much it's referenced in our pop culture and our society. If Andy, you've watched Legion, right?
Of course.
You remember the multiverse episode with all the different lives that David lived in?
Yeah.
The homeless one, the very like old looking, messy, schizophrenic version of him that's like, there's a scene in the alleyway that is a lot exactly like that one scene from the film.
I don't know if you remember Eek the Cat, but there was a season of Eek the Cat where they threw in one scene from A Clockwork Orange in every episode that season. Which
it also feels kind of, I mean, there's that scene in American Psycho when we talked about that recently, right? Where he kind of tortures the homeless guy and then kills his dog. It feels like that scene kind of is reminiscent of the scene where he, tortures the homeless guy in this. I mean, obviously in that case, it's, it's not him and his boys, it's just him. But I feel like brutality towards the homeless is always kind of is like a well-torn or well-trodden trope, I think, when you're trying to show how it's like psychotic a lot of these, like, cruelty towards the most vulnerable in our society. And I think the speech that the homeless guy gives in this, where he's talking to them about I think that cruelty towards the homeless, cruelty towards the most vulnerable is a hallmark of fascism, right? Like that's within a fascist society, like that is something absolutely like dystopic and widespread that happens. But I
you also get that in like good liberal neighborhoods because they don't want to see homeless around. They have like just appalling treatment of homeless.
Yeah. But he says it's a sticky world because there's no law and order anymore. It's a sticky world because it lets the young get onto the old like you done. And I think that it's interesting that even the homeless man in this society is calling for the same kind of law and order that like the conservatives are offering, right? Like because their big claims of power in this is that they're the party of law and order, and of course that's completely reminiscent of the Nixonian era Republican Party or Reagan's party or Margaret Thatcher coming to power. Like all of those things, law and order is always a central component of that promise.
Yay, fascism.
So how do you sound, Conan?
I don't know.
You sound great. Great. You sound great.
Right.
But
Restream's I hate this app. Restream's terrible, by the way. But it's brought to you by Restream, but it's the only thing I ever have problems with.
We're StreamYard people on this end.
I mean, like, look, if I have any affiliation, I'll go with the one that works, where I have the same setup and it works fine, and then like I go over here and it's something different. But anyway, yeah, I mean, like it's I know you're talking about Thatcher's Britain and whatnot, and I think that's. It's interesting that we've had like a few go rounds with like Clockwork Orange style stuff, right? I mean, that's amazing. That it keeps coming around and being relevant. That says more about our society than the movie, but it says a lot about the movie as well. So I don't know.
It feels. I mean,
I had a couple of good points, but I'll never get to them now. So whatever.
No, go ahead.
It's fine. I mean, I just think it's a deft move that Alex is like a reprehensible sociopath, and there are multiple times in the movie that you find yourself being like, "Oh man, I hope he gets away." And you're like, wait a minute, what am I talking about? Right?
Yeah.
It's like Breaking Bad or something that way.
Well, Conan, as we all know, Alex is supposed to have like a Cockney accent, but Malcolm McDowell wanted to do his like Northern English one because he felt like maybe people would be more sympathetic and he would be like less like more approachable as a character. So that's why we're like, oh, rooting for him, and then we're like,
it's classism.
Fuck no! What are we doing?
It's our own. It's our own classism towards Cockney British people.
Yes.
Wow, and look at like how Star Wars, like all the Empire, they all were like English actors, right? And like that was that's something that
mostly because it was filmed in England, but
yes, but it also was an aesthetic choice. Like it was, it's a thing. It's a cultural bias.
British accent.
Based on colonialism and like what used to be the British Empire.
That's why, like, if you watch Cockney versus Zombies, you're cheering for the zombies.
So I have a clip of that I found of. It's actually rare that he gives an interview at this time about it, but it is a clip of Malcolm McDowell talking about working with Stanley Kubrick, and he's kind of a dick about it in this, which I like because I think Stanley Kubrick deserves it. But
agreed.
On. No, I want this as the picture in picture.
Uncut Gems. Whoa.
Love that movie.
Hey, Kristina. Hey, Andy. Hey, me.
Yes, you just told me that Kubrick is living with all his machines, telex, ping pong table, and...
Yeah. Well, he's the most disorganized, organized man I've ever met, because he has so many filing systems, he cannot remember where anything is. They're all marvelous systems on their own, but he has maybe 4 or 5 or 6, and he can't remember where anything is, you know. I remember asking him for some photographs of a location. I wanted to look at them and see. Couldn't find them. Took him 2 weeks to find them. Incredible. But he's an extraordinary man. I think the extraordinary thing about these great directors is that they are able to create an atmosphere where you can create, and this is very important. You see, there's this myth going around that Stanley is in complete control, which is not true, because Stanley never knows where to put the camera, and he barely knows what scene we're shooting, and he comes in with no preparation, but that's because he's an artist, you see. And any director who knows what he's going to do, well, a very poor director, because he must use the elements that happen, the spontaneity that happens on the set. And he's able to do that. And, I mean, some of the scenes the actors wrote themselves in Clockwork Orange. The whole of the end scene with the mouth opening up and taking the food at the end of the film, it was completely just done on the spur of the moment. The singing in the rain sequence was something that came into my own head, and I started to sing it. I was kicking, you know, the stunt man and slapping the woman, and started to singing in the rain, you know, something that just happens.
That's very strange, because when you see the picture, you have the idea that everything is prepared and...
Oh, well, he's clever, too. I mean, he's very clever, Stanley, you know. It's absolutely true that he couldn't really... he couldn't work by knowing exactly what was going to happen. He much prefers... If he likes an actor, and there's not many actors he trusts, very few, very, very few. If he trusts you, then he'll go with you, and you can do practically anything for him. And he's marvelous to work. For me, he was marvelous. Some of the other actors, not quite so good. But then I worked with him, I mean, just shooting every day for 7 months. 7 months, long time.
Is that actually Henry Kissinger, or is that just a dude that sounds like Henry Kissinger?
No, it's just this dude that sounds like Henry Kissinger.
Because I would think that'd be quite the post cabinet. Yeah, the post cabinet.
Is there like a support group for actors who worked for Stanley Kubrick at all? Like,
no, because if there was, then maybe Tom Cruise would have gotten some help.
That marriage wouldn't have fallen apart.
I just feel like it's necessary.
That marriage was already falling apart. Sorry, not to be yeah. I can't blame that one on Kubrick. Look,
I like that after torturing them for as long as he did, though, he dropped dead for it 4 days later. He finished editing the movie, and then he was just dead in like 4 days after.
Have you read the conspiracy websites about that? And like they cut 6 minutes of footage, and like It's basically implied that, you know, he got a little bit too close to the truth with the elite sex party. No, that was, you know, the real people run the world, people. Real Alex Jones stuff.
Oh, that sex cult stuff.
Mm-hmm. But like that, you know, the timing's awful coincidental. He's an old fucking guy. It wasn't that coincidental.
So I mean I've told this story before, but when I was in Austin last year, I met some guy that my like girlfriend at the time knew, like had stayed on his. He did like some couch surfing thing, and he was telling us the story. This was like 3 days after I finished watching for a stream that I was doing with Ben and Andy and like about that movie Eyes Wide Shut. And this guy told me in Austin after I watched it that he had gone to Bohemian Grove. And his cousin was a jazz musician, like a famous one who had passed away. And he said his cousin was hired to play play one night at Bohemian Grove. And he said that he had met Malcolm McDowell sitting at the bar in Bohemian Grove and had like asked him like asked him questions about Clockwork Orange, and Malcolm McDowell got like all mad at him and like walked off in a huff or something because he didn't want to talk about it. But good link between those two movies.
There needs to be a support group. I'm onto something.
There you go.
I mean, look at poor Shelley Duvall. I mean,
That's the big example, right? I mean, like practically put her in the
I wonder how
madhouse.
he treated the actors who played Lolita.
Yeah,
no one talks about Lolita, right?
This is because it's Kubrick's worst movie.
Yeah,
it's not great.
Obviously, you can't really get away with the source material in 1962.
Yeah, it's not great.
I remember being way more bored than I thought it would be, and being like, man, I feel like this movie should be more interesting.
Yeah,
it's not.
It's not. Just watch 2001 again. You'll see.
At least we got an interesting film out of this.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's something to be said to the fact that like this movie is meant to horrify, and it was one of the most horrifying non-horror movies I think I've ever seen, and it still shocks to this day. And like, can we talk about the style and design, because it's been homaged or ripped off by so many people, from like David Bowie and Lady Gaga. I mean, The Simpsons, right? I mean, there's like it's a culturally ubiquitous, and like. I forget the woman's name, but it's an iconic thing that it's also different than how it's even described in the book. Like she kind of just went off on her own. And
Conan, I mentioned the one episode of Legion.
Yes,
where David has the multiverse episode that scene in the alleyway with homeless David.
Yep.
Like that was heavily, and also too, like a lot of things about even the name of like the mental Clockworks obviously probably was a reference to Clockwork Orange. Like there's so many references in Legion from like that film, obviously. And
by the way, if you're playing the movie Extravaganza game, you have to take a drink because we mentioned Legion. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is incredibly referenced. I like the modernist elements to it too, like the actual architecture of like the houses that they're inside of, and their actual like, I mean, well, number one, like, I mean, obviously they're kind of strange costumes in the beginning of it, but like throughout the movie, right, like they have all these interesting things, and like they capture that like artist ethos, that modernist kind of thing. I mean, especially with like, you know, the sculptures of penises, and like everything is kind of drawn with like excessive sexuality.
There's really just the one, but it seems like there's multiple ones because it looms so large.
There's more than one in her house, I thought, but yeah, I like when he hits the tip though, and she's like, don't touch that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's something to be said to the fact that, you know, the places that he's committing these assaults and robberies are all like, you know, obviously rich folks' houses for the most part, whereas everything else kind of looks thrashed. Like if you look like him on walking back to his mom and dad's place, which ain't no great shakes, right? Everything is trashed and looks horrible, and it's so fascinating that how that's depicted in the film. You know, versus, you know, how much different is that than reality? That like, you know, the men, usually young men who come from an impoverished background, like they grow up and they end up feeling nihilistic because they're like not given hope. And there's a larger conversation to have there. But I just like how it's depicted in the movie, where like only the rich people seem to have any place like remotely decent. I mean, who knows if Alex keeps the snake in a drawer for logistical purposes or just because he likes it? But it's like, yes, put the snake in a drawer, people. Come on.
Yeah, well, and I also like the fact that, I mean, the excess sexuality of everything. Like when you actually go to Alex's house, right? Like he's drawn like the dicks and like the things onto the Roman or like the Greek things inside of his house, and like everything is kind of decorated with like I think one of the things is like why don't you eat me or something. Like there's all these like sexualized you know, graffiti all over the things in the apartment building. But then you go to the woman's house who's living on like the health farm, and the art is actually very similar. It's overly sexualized, it's stylized. So like you realize that both in the context of like this new age weird like health farm, and in Alex's actual house, this entire society is over sexualized.
Yeah, without actually being explicitly, you know, sexy necessarily, like which is something that also is very indicative of like fascistic societies, right? You have the urges that you can then put towards more useful things.
Yeah, that's what the Joy Division's for.
Yeah, exactly. The actual Joy Division.
like the style of the film as well is definitely heavily influenced. Like a lot of directing style, at least.
Well, I mean, like the thing
Absolutely.
is one of the things, and you kind of do it yourself, Kristina, with your background, is the kind of forced perspective where you have like the lines of the room leading you to the center. So no matter what horrific things Kubrick's putting in front of you, because of like everything's pointing to the middle of the frame, and you can't take your eyes off of it. Just like those lines going right to Kristina's head.
And also, there's almost like a cartoonish element to a lot of it that makes the violence a lot less horrifying than it could be, I think. Otherwise, I mean, of course, the murder itself, when he kills the woman, it all of a sudden you see like the screen fill up with like all these like interesting patterns and stuff, and it's almost like seeing like the pow boom, like when Batman hits somebody or something like that, right? Like you're transferred out of the horrificness of the violence the same way kind of when you see the rape scene or whatever and it transitions out of it, and it's just the fact they're wearing the masks and like the over stylized nature of everything makes it so that you're not hit by the violence in the same kind of horrific way that you could be. I mean, it's still terrifying, but like it's not you're not hit with the full force of it.
And also, like, Clockwork Orange came at a time where films like Bonnie and Clyde and like other films that really showed violence in films was becoming more the norm. Like this was where cinema was going at. Like there's tons and tons of essays like on like how certain films didn't really make it post the sexual revolution because people wanted the nitty gritty. They did not want Hello Dolly. They wanted Cabaret. Like they wanted something that had like, little filthiness to it.
And did you, there's a documentary called A Forbidden Orange that is pretty fascinating. Actually, it's narrated by Malcolm McDowell. And it talks about basically how Franco's government in Spain banned it. Just banned it. And, these people kept trying to get it shown and kept trying to just have the movie like have an audience, right? And then it eventually premieres uncensored at a very long running religious festival, which is kind of amazing, and one of like the most conservative cities in Spain. So it's called A Forbidden Orange. It's actually really, really interesting documentary just because of that. But culturally, I mean, and also they had like knockoff movies. Like there's like a Giallo movie or Giallo-ish movie that is kind of like sort of meant to be like an unauthorized sequel, but also just kind of rips it off as well. And it's just kind of weird and sort of like I would say it's like Italian Spider-Man sort of thing without being like Italian Spider-Man, right? But it's called, and so it was originally called A Clockwork Terror.
And I just want to point out that
and it's called a Murder in a Blue World.
Brought it up, and not Italian Spider-Man, not me.
Conan did that. You're right, I did. I totally did. It's called Murder in a Blue World is the alternate. But yeah, Clockwork Terror is what it's called. And it's called Forbidden Orange is the name of that documentary. Really interesting because the thing you got to remember is like, this depiction of like casual fascism, right? Franco's government, right? A fascist dictatorship. So it's like you don't want to have Clockwork Orange shown. So I think the viewers of the show and the This Is Revolution crowd would find some value in that. I know I did. I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to talk about before we go over to our channel for the after party, which I don't know if we're gonna get too much time to talk about anything over there, but I want to talk about the Ludovico technique. If anyone has any thoughts about that, and just the concept of, I think, aversion therapy is kind of interesting because I mean it's still kind of used today. There's various medications.
Banned.
Yeah.
Like,
well, there's various medications that people take, especially when they have like addiction or something, that instead of like actually going against the actual root causes of addiction, this happens every few years. They start promoting a new one. It like makes you sick when you drink, or it makes you sick when you use cocaine or heroin or something, right?
Or when you're watching porn.
Is there that? I didn't.
Or when you're watching porn, that's what a lot of those like conversion like LGBTQ camps do. They try to make it unpleasant to watch.
That's conversion therapy. I'm talking about adversion therapy.
Oh, I thought you said conversion.
Aversion therapy it's just any therapy that makes you sick when you do something that's like a compulsion. And so that's the Ludovico technique in this is a form of aversion therapy where your brain is actually wired, instead of like making you instead of looking at like emotional or physical causes or mental causes of violence, like it's literally just forcing you to become sick whenever you see it.
And we don't talk about aversion treatment.
We don't. People are not talking about that more and more.
Yeah.
People are talking about that less and less.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's horrible, but it's like actual aversion therapy is a real thing. And again, the idea I said earlier, I'm going to stand by my assessment that it's addressing the letter of the problem without addressing the intent, right? And that's what's so fascinating about using the street thug as like foot soldier kind of thing, as in under the guise of rehabilitation, and
We can
again,
fix you.
Yeah, terrifying, right? And unless you're the guy from Dilbert, in which case he's just murdered your child. That was the thing I saw today. I'm like,
yeah, no, I
Oh
responded to
my
that.
God.
I responded to that with the Walter White thing where he's like, "I watched Jane die." Like,
I mean, what a world we live in that you
Even
can
the
find out what that
congresswoman
guy
was
thinks
saying
about it.
that. I'm like, lady, shut up.
Yeah, there was a congresswoman that came out today. I don't know why this is on the same day. This congresswoman said today that she's against gun control because she wants to protect her 5 grandchildren, even if she has to kill them.
Say less.
She's my zombie apocalypse.
Just you don't have to say anything. You don't have to.
Seriously.
She's my
It's
new
not
zombie
that
apocalypse
difficult.
partner. Like, even if her grandchild turns, she will kill her grandchild.
It'll be like, look at the pretty flowers. Look at the pretty flowers.
Yeah,
Exactly.
She's
Wow.
Carol. Yeah, but like, yeah,
Wow.
I just think it definitely. So the line that the minister of the interior says, cram criminals together, and what do you get? Concentrated criminality, crime in the midst of punishment. Not a chance, fellow. This government. Oh, he says the guy says something about more funding. Like, hey, well, why don't we just get more funding? He's like, not a chance. The government can't be concerned any longer with outmoded penological theories. Soon we've been needing all our prison space for political offenders. Common criminals like this are best dealt with on a curative basis. Kill the criminal reflex. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to change the underlying things that make them a sociopath. That's fine. That's useful. That's useful for them, right? That's a good little soldier if you get them pointed in the right direction.
Yeah.
Slap a Bible in their hand in one hand and slap a gun in the other. Let's go.
Give them a badge. Give them a badge and a gun. Like
worked out great for Dim.
Yeah. The old Kyle Rittenhouse kind of thing.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Yes.
2 jobs for 2 growing men that are now of job age. The police. I think we're gonna call it there, though. If you're watching this, please subscribe on YouTube, Movie Night Extravaganza. If you're watching this on Movie Night Extravaganza channel, of course, and you're already subscribed, please subscribe to the This Is Revolution podcast. YouTube channel. We are going to go over to the after party anniversary party in about 15 minutes. Thanks so much for celebrating 1 year of Movie Night Extravaganza with us. We're going to try to get into more conversations about Clockwork Orange, but we have like 10 different guests that are joining us in the after party, so you're not going to want to miss that. Yeah, good night.